Hi ladies and gentlemen, I'll be doing a review on this hair after this video, but now I'm going to be showing you how I customize my 360 frontals. They're usually too big for me. As you can see, I already cut out one side. I'm showing you the back where it has adjustable straps. I'm going to split it on the opposite side of the side that I already did and cut at the natural seam that is on the 360 frontal. So just pin the hair to the side so you don't cut it, and cut it right beside the seam, not on the toward the back side, but on the front side of the 360 frontal. And I'm flipping it open just so you can see. So the side with the adjustable straps, you don't cut that side because you will ruin your adjustable straps. I'm laying it on top of foil because I'll also be bleaching the knots on the front side of my frontal. I am splitting off some hairs that I'm going to cut off. Because the cap is too large, I will need to cut off some fabric and hair to make it a bit smaller. So it's important that you follow along the seam. And the seam kind of cuts diagonal, so make sure you're cutting diagonally. Follow along that seam. I am clipping back the hairs just to make sure it doesn't get in the way when I start to bleach my frontal. I'm using the Clairol Kaleidoscope powder as well as the Clairol Developer. And both of them are Clairol. I found that the same brands work best together. I do not have the appropriate material, so you see me get a little hood girl. So I have a Walgreens cut and a plastic spoon, but don't use any metals when you're doing this, or plastic knife. So I'm mixing the concoction together until it's the perfect consistency. The perfect consistency basically is like toothpaste, really thick toothpaste. It can't be runny because if it is runny, it's going to run to the other side of your hair and you're going to bleach more than your knots. You're going to bleach your hair as well. So I go back and forth to find the perfect consistency. I don't measure because I kind of know what the consistency should look like. I said consistency about 20 times, my bad. As you can see, I'm mixing and I'm starting to spread it on the front side of the frontal. I'm not bleaching the back side because I don't think I had enough product for that, but that's fine. All you see is the front anyway. But if you want to get fancy, girl, you can do the other side. As you can tell, I did not sew the hair together yet because it's so much easier to bleach your frontals when it's cut open. If you have to turn it inside out and bleach it that way, it gets a little bit more difficult and a little bit more messy. So I'm using a soft hand to spread it over the frontal so I don't press it through the other side and bleach the actual hair. End up with blonde roots, girl. So you just want to make sure those knots are attacked. And I'm spreading it as much as possible. I didn't do it perfectly because I was rushing. I was headed over for a trip, so I just was spreading it as much as I can. Just make sure it's a pretty thick layer and you're not pressing it into the lace. It's very important to do it with a gentle hand. We use the foil because it helps I think it helps develop the knots a little bit better and it helps it to get lighter and more even quicker, and that does help. And I also put foil on the other side. It's the first time I tried this method and it worked out very well. So after about 20 minutes, I rinsed out the dye or the solution or whatever you want to call it, the bleach. That's what it is, the bleach, girl. I rinsed it out in my sink. And I usually would do it with gloves, but like I told you, I didn't have the right material. Make sure you do have gloves. So I rinsed it out until it was clean, and I used my Castile soap. It is pH balanced, so it's best for you to use a pH balanced shampoo so you can stop the processing of the bleach on the hair. If you continue to leave it on, then you can end up over processing your knots. So the reason why you wash it off with soap is so you can balance the hair again and it can stop the processing. And you lay that over to the side for about 10 minutes. After it's been laid to the side for 10 minutes, I rinse that out and then I add conditioner on it as well. I kind of lost that clip, but I add conditioner to it just to make sure the knots are not dried out. I also conditioned my frontal while I was doing that, and I let that sit for about another 20 minutes. So make sure you have a lot of times. There's a lot of hurry up and wait going on. So I just rinsed it out with cool water. Don't do hot because it can dry out the hair. Squeezed it out. And I always use a t-shirt or some cloth to dry out my hair, not towels, because I can really snag at the hair and break it off. So I'm using a comb just to go ahead, or brush to brush out the hair, and I am starting to pluck my frontal now because it's a bit easier to pluck when it is wet. I found that it's a little bit easier. This frontal was already pre-plucked, but I wanted to get it a little bit more and just go ahead and save myself some time while it was drying. So I did this for about, I want to say about 20 minutes. It's easier to pull out in clumps, but I just decided to tweeze it. So as it dried a little bit, you can see that the ends are a little bit wet, but the roots are dry. I am going to sew the frontal back together. I see that other people use the sewing machine method, but I ain't got no sewing machine, girl, and this method is just as good. You just have to make sure you're lining up the frontal correctly. So I line up one side and add a clip just to make sure it stays secure and tight and it doesn't move around. And I just sew. I just do the loop around sewing method. So I don't go back and forth like I'm stitching, but I just loop it around. It's much quicker and it really doesn't make a difference between the two. So just make sure you're doing it very tight so you don't have loops in it, and make sure you're pushing the hair back so it's not in the loop. But you're still going to get some hair grouped in there, and that's just fine. It helps to disguise the stitching either way. So I just loop it up. So how I usually tie a knot is I loop the thread around the needle and pull it through, and then I tie a knot just to make sure it's secure. I'm turning the frontal back inside out just so you can see. And now I'm just going to add it to my mannequin head so I can just start sewing the hair onto the cap. I'm sewing the cap down in place, but first I have to make sure that all the hair is out of the way. We don't need tangles and a mess, girl. But as you can see, you cannot tell where we adjusted the frontal at all. Got me some cute little pigtails going. And as you can see, the knots also look very good. They look bleached to perfection. I think this is the best bleaching job I ever did. And I attribute that to the foil and the Clairol products. So I'm doing a loose sew down. You can do it much tighter. I just was being lazy because, like I said, I was in a rush. And please excuse my lighting as well. I didn't have the correct lighting because guess what? I was in a rush. So I'm just sewing all the way around just to make sure the lace is out of the way. You don't cut this lace off because this is what keeps your frontal connected to the cap underneath. So I do the same method of tying it in a knot, wrap it around 3 times the needle and pull it through. And we'll just start with the hair. I already did one track and I just flip it over. Make sure you have your pins handy because this helps the process go much quicker. Pin down where you'd like the track to sit or to live. Pin her down and then push the needle through the track just to make sure it's secure after the flip over. I push it through the track about 2 or 3 times and then loop it around. And I was doing big loops on this because I was being lazy. I was really trying to get through making this wig. And it actually didn't take me too long to make this wig. So I did this process all the way up to the top of the head. I just went back and forth. I won't go all the way through because this is basically focusing on customizing the frontal. Once I get to the end, I do the same thing. I push the needle through the track just to make sure it's secure and it's easy to flip over. And then I pin it once again. Now that we're all done, we're going to cut off the excess cap that's in the middle. Make sure you're careful and you don't cut your thread that connected the cap to the 360 frontal. So take your time. And you can see the stitching right there on the frontal. And the bleach knots. Hey girl, they look good. Also, be careful cutting off the lace on the very front. It's easy to just chop off some hair and you really don't want to do that. So this is me. I want to show you how I apply my wig. This headband stops your wig from sliding. You can sleep in your wig. You can throw your head around. And I really want to do a review on this headband. It's great. But that's the finished product. I used some Got2b glued and it made the wig look so realistic. I loved it. Thank you for watching. Love you all. Bye.